Welcome to the Wrestling Analyst Podcast, Beyond the Bell, the show where we break down the biggest stories, the boldest moves, and the most shocking twists in the world of professional wrestling in WWE. This week, the road to the Royal Rumble is heating up, and we've got a stacked lineup for you. We'll kick things off with the week in review, covering all the chaos from Raw in Belfast, NXT's high-stakes ladder match qualifiers, SmackDown's Montreal Madness, and a blockbuster Saturday night's main event that changed everything. Then we dive deep into one of the most compelling storylines on Raw, Dungeon Betrayal. Becky Lynch, Maxxine Dupri, and the rise of a new Nattie persona that could shape up the women's division. After that, we revisit one of WWE's biggest creative missteps in history, the WCW ECW invasion, and analyze why it remains the ultimate what if in wrestling lore. And finally, we step into the analyst booking room for a fantasy booking masterclass. Drew McIntyre's reign, Sami Zayn's redemption, and how belief collides with control on the road to SummerSlam. Yes, I'm going all the way to SummerSlam. So buckle up. This episode is packed with insight, drama, and the kind of analysis you won't find anywhere else. It's time to go Beyond the Bell. Welcome to the Wrestling Analyst Podcast, Beyond the Bell, where the real story begins after the final bell. I'm your host, Night Stalker Luc Baudier, and together we'll break down the week's biggest moments, analyze storylines, and bring you opinions that hit harder than the steel chair. We will also explore how I would be booking a storyline if I were head of creative. Because here, every match tells a story, and we're here to break it down. So hit subscribe, leave a like, and click that notification bell, and let's go Beyond the Bell. Okay, so the week in review. Before going any further, starting this week, I will publish my podcasts on the Sundays instead of the Saturdays. It's going to give me a bit more time for me to do those videos because I'm running out of time sometimes. Like yesterday, I had to work all day, so that's why I couldn't publish anything. So from today on, my podcasts are going to be published on Sundays. So let's start with the Raw recap. And also this week, I will not dive as deep in the recaps as I usually do. I'm just going to do some main points from each episode, and I'll go more in details in some other segments. So Raw came to us from Belfast, Northern Ireland, and the road to Royal Rumble is heating up. Here are the top takeaways you need to know. In the main event, Punk defended his World Heavyweight Championship against Finn Balor in a hard-hitting main event. Balor had the home region advantage, but Punk proved he's still the top guy heading into the Royal Rumble. Now, CM Punk had his babyface team for this match, and this tells me that I think they are preparing a babyface turn for Finn Balor. It's been in the works for a long time. I think it was just postponed because of Dom's injury, but I think it's coming. In the women's division, there was a lot of drama here. Becky Lynch retained her Intercontinental Championship against Maxxine Dupri, but the real shock came after the bell. Natalya turned heel, attacking Dupri and setting up a new feud that could shake up the division. And I'm talking about a little bit more about this subject in my detailed storyline breakdown. Gunther versus AJ Styles is going to be high stakes. Gunther started the show berating John Cena again. AJ Styles came, and basically Gunther announced his entry to the Royal Rumble, by the way, but AJ Styles demanded a rematch at the Rumble. So is Gunther going to be in the Rumble now? That's the big question. But AJ Styles demanded a rematch against Gunther, and Gunther agreed on one condition. Styles has to put his career on the line, and that's official, and it's huge. Tag Team Chaos. Rey Mysterio, Penta, and Dragon Lee scored a win over Logan Paul, Bronson Reed, and Austin Theory in a six-man tag that ended in chaos thanks to interference from Adam Pearce and Paul Heyman. Unfortunately, there was an injury. El Grande Americano versus Javon Evans. Now, Javon Evans suffered an injury during his match and forcing a referee stoppage. So his status for the Rumble could be in jeopardy. Hope Javon is good. Hope that injury will not be too severe to make him miss maybe like 6 months of action. I hope not. So with multiple stars declaring for the Royal Rumble and tensions boiling over, next week's Raw is going to be must-see. Well, tomorrow's Raw. Who's your pick to win the Royal Rumble? Let me know. So now with NXT. First order of business, Ethan Page retains the North American title. So All Ego successfully defended his NXT North American Championship against debuting Ilio LaFleur. LaFleur impressed with his high-flying offense, but Page used underhanded tactics, grabbing the trunk, to keep his title. Ladder match qualifiers heat up. Two big qualifiers for the upcoming NXT Championship ladder match on February 3rd. Shiloh Hill defeated Josh Briggs, and Shawn Legacy beat Eli Knight. Both matches showcased NXT's rising stars, but chaos followed as Tony D'Angelo attacked all four competitors after their bouts. Tag team division shakeup. So the tag team division, the Vanity Project, Brad Baylor and Ricky Smokes picked up their first win as official NXT superstars, defeating Chase U in wild tag team actions. This could signal a new era for the tag division. And the women's division, Jada Parker grabbed the mic, verbally destroyed the glamour Blake Monroe, putting her on notice. Meanwhile, GM Ava announced a huge triple threat match for NXT's North American Championship on February 3rd with Izzy Dane defending against the two challengers. And in the main event, for the number one spot, contender spot for the TNA Knockouts Tag Team Championship, Zaruka won the triple threat tag match against Rent UCC and Fatal Influence to earn the title shot. So with Tony D'Angelo attacks, new title matches announced, and NXT is sending the stage for a wild February, who do you think will climb the ladder and become the NXT champion? So as for SmackDown, Sami Zayn fires up Montreal. He kicked off the night with a passionate promo in front of his hometown crowd, promising to become the number one contender for Drew McIntyre's undisputed championship. Trick Williams interrupted, throwing shade and reminding Sami of his past failures. Damian Priest joined the fray, leading to a heated confrontation that set the tone for the night. So that's how everything started. United States Championship Open Challenge. Carmelo Hayes faced Ilya Dragunov again in what was a hard-hitting classic. Dragunov fought through a knee injury, but Hayes retained after interference from The Miz. These two continued to deliver bangers every time they meet. And I hope that what I made in my fantasy booking last time with the Dragunov and Hayes happens at some point. That would be a very good storyline. In the MFT shocked the world by defeating the Wyatt Six to become the new WWE Tag Team Champions. Chaos erupted ringside. Solo Sikoa's involvement sealed the deal for the challengers. This win adds major intrigue in heading into the Royal Rumble. Julia and Kiana James earned a huge victory in a triple threat tag match against Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss and Nia Jax and Lash Legend, becoming the number one contenders for the Women's Tag Team Championship. Meanwhile, Jade Cargill defeated Chelsea Green and nearly came to blows with Jordynne Grace backstage, setting up a future showdown. Nathan Fraser scored a big win over Johnny Gargano. Axiom retrieved his mask, but then what got stolen again by Gargano's wife, Candice LeRae. Jacob Fatu and Cody Rhodes had a tense face-to-face segment, adding fuel to their rivalry ahead of Saturday night's main event. More on that later. And the main event between Trick Williams, Damian Priest, Randy Orton, and Sami Zayn ended in chaos. And Zayn took the pin, haluva kick on Damian Priest. Sorry. I'm mixing with the Saturday night's main event right now. So it was Damian Priest versus Trick Williams, and it ended in chaos after Sami Zayn interfered. And Orton made an RKO on everybody at that time. So with new champions crowned, rivalries heating up, and the Royal Rumble just a week away, SmackDown delivered big drama. Who do you think will walk out of Saturday night's main event as the number one contender? We already know it was Sami Zayn. But who should have won the match? Who would you have liked to win that match and become the number one contender? Let me know in the comments. Now we get to Saturday night's main event. So this is the advantage of doing my podcast on Sundays. I can give you the results right off the bat from the PLEs, like Saturday night's main event yesterday or next week with the Royal Rumble. So, opening chaos. The show kicked off with what was supposed to be Cody Rhodes versus Jacob Fatu, but the match never officially started. Fatu attacked Rhodes during his entrance, sparking an all-out brawl that spilled into the crowd backstage and even the concourse. Security, Quebec independent wrestlers, but security couldn't contain them, and then Drew McIntyre showed up, taking both men out with brutal table spots. This wasn't a match, it was a statement from the champ, and it hints at a possible triple threat feud down the line. Like I said on social media, expect a WrestleMania match between Drew McIntyre, Cody Rhodes, and Jacob Fatu for the world title, for the undisputed WWE title, and expect Drew to retain. More on that in my booking room segment today. I'm talking about that very storyline. Women's Tag Team Championship. Rio retains. So Rhea Ripley and Io Sky defended their Tag Team Championship against Liv Morgan and Roxanne Perez in a hard-fought match. Judgment Day's Raquel Rodriguez interfered, but Stephanie Vaquero made a surprise return to even the odds. In the end, Ripley hit the Riptide on Morgan to secure the win. The champs now look ahead to Julia and Kiana James, who earned a title shot on SmackDown. AJ Styles versus Shinsuke Nakamura, a rivalry's final chapter. So they delivered a classic in what may be their last singles match in WWE. Both men paid homage to their New Japan Pro Wrestling roots after a physical contest. Styles picked up the win with a Styles Clash. Post-match, the two shared a moment of respect, a fitting end to a storied rivalry as Styles heads into his career-threatening match against Gunther at the Royal Rumble. Now, I don't expect Styles to lose at the Royal Rumble against Gunther. I expect Styles to win, to continue, reface Gunther down the line, and then lose another career match against Gunther. Because Gunther is a career killer right now. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if AJ Styles wants to end his WWE career from 10 years, Royal Rumble 2016 to Royal Rumble 2026, it could be the case. But I don't think that will be what's happening. I don't think. But it's still a possibility. And in the main event, the night closed with the fatal four-way to determine Drew McIntyre's next challenger. Sami Zayn versus Randy Orton versus Damian Priest versus Trick Williams. In front of his hometown crowd, Zayn hit the Aloha kick on Priest to score the pin and heard the WWE Undisputed Championship match against Drew McIntyre at the Royal Rumble. McIntyre tried to attack post-match, but Zayn stood tall, sending the champ retreating as Montreal erupted. So with Zayn and McIntyre set, AJ Styles facing Gunther, and chaos brewing between Rhodes and Fatu, the Royal Rumble card is shaping up to be explosive. Who do you think walks out of Riyadh as champion? Personally, I think it's Drew. Because he just started his title reign. It would make no sense for me to have him lose the title already. And later this week, I will make a video with my predictions for the Royal Rumble events. So I will start doing standalone videos for PLEs with my predictions. And it's going to be on the Tuesday night. I'm going to put this online. But it's going to be during the week. So on with the detailed storyline. Welcome back to the Wrestling Analyst Podcast Beyond the Belt. Today, in my detailed storyline breakdown, we're diving deep into one of Raw's most compelling rivalries, Becky Lynch versus Maxxine Dupri. This feud has everything: underdog triumphs, controversial finishes, shocking betrayals, and it's shaping the future of the women's division as we head into the Royal Rumble. So let's rewind to late 2025. Maxxine Dupri was seen as a lower card talent, mostly known for her charisma and managerial work. Then came the shock. She started picking up wins over Becky Lynch, a multi-time world champion and one of WWE's biggest stars. Those victories weren't flukes, they were calculated, and they earned Maxxine a shot at the Women's Intercontinental Championship. On November 17th, 2025, Maxxine pulled off the upset of the year, defeating Becky for the title, thanks to interference from AJ Lee. Well, it was more distraction than interference, but still it was there. And that started Becky's spiral into conspiracy theories and Trump-like behavior on X, which is freaking hilarious. But this win marked her first championship reign for Maxxine and instantly put her on the map. What made this rise even more compelling was the story behind it. Maxxine had been training under Natalya in the legendary Heart Dungeon. Both before and after her Intercontinental Championship win, Natalya positioned herself as a mentor, helping Maxxine sharpen her technical skills and build confidence. Fans saw this as a passing of the torch moment, a veteran guiding a rising star, but as we'll see, that mentorship didn't last. Fast forward to January 5th, 2026. Becky Lynch regained the title, but not without controversy. During the match, Becky escaped Maxxine's ankle lock and scored the win by holding the ropes, a classic heel tactic. That moment reignited the feud and set the stage for their match in Belfast. This wasn't just about the title anymore. It was about pride, revenge, and proving who really belonged at the top of the division. January 19th, 2026. Raw in Belfast. Becky defended her title against Maxxine in what looked like a redemption match for the challenger. But then came the twist. Natalya, who had been mentoring Maxxine, turned heel mid-match. She put Becky's foot on the ropes during a pin attempt, costing Maxxine the match. Becky capitalized with a manhandle slam to retain the title. And if that wasn't enough drama, Natalya attacked Maxxine after the bell, locking her in the sharpshooter and declaring their alliance over. This betrayal shifted the entire dynamic of the feud. Maxxine isn't just chasing Becky, she's out for revenge against Natalya. And here's where things get really interesting. WWE could use this feud to repackage Natalya into her rumored Nattie persona, a more aggressive UFC-inspired character. Think submission-heavy offense, MMA-style gear, and a no-nonsense attitude like we saw a couple of times already in her AAA matches. This would give Natalya a fresh edge and make her rivalry with Maxxine feels like a true fight rather than a standard wrestling feud. Imagine Maxxine, the flashy upstart, going toe-to-toe with a hardened cage fighter version of Natalya. That's a story fans can sink their teeth into. This whole storyline with Becky has done wonders for Maxxine's credibility. She's gone from a supporting role to a legitimate singles competitor. WWE is clearly investing in her as a future star, and this feud is her proving ground. For Becky, this heel turn adds depth to her character. She's no longer the underdog, the man. She's a cunning champion, willing to cheat to keep her title. That opens the door for fresh rivalries, including a potential showdown with AJ Lee at the Royal Rumble or WrestleMania. Now, I see this more at WrestleMania myself. And let's not forget Natalya. Her betrayal creates a secondary feud that keeps multiple women relevant and adds layers to the division. So what happens next? Here's my take. Becky retains the title of the Royal Rumble against whoever it is in a match that cements her heel persona for good. Maxxine versus Natalya becomes personal and could culminate in a stipulation match at Elimination Chamber. Maybe even a fight pit style match if WWE leads into Natalya's new persona. WrestleMania? Becky walks in as champion, but who challenges her? My prediction? AJ Lee. Simple as that. Maxxine? She's not ready for Mania's stage yet, but she's on her way. Long term, this storyline could elevate Maxxine into a consistent upper card role, but at least mid card, while Becky solidifies her legacy as one of WWE's most versatile performers. So that's our deep dive into Becky Lynch versus Maxxine Dupri, a feud that's redefining Raw's women division. What do you think? Is Maxxine destined for a breakout moment, or will Becky steamroll her way to WrestleMania? And how do you feel about Natalya possibly embracing a UFC-inspired Nattie persona in WWE? Let me know in the comments. Okay, so today, in my opinion segment, WCW, ECW invasion. WWE's biggest storyline fumble in history. Picture this. It's 2001. WWE has just purchased WCW and ECW, ending the Monday Night Wars and cementing Vince McMahon's dominance in the wrestling world. Fans everywhere were buzzing with excitement. This was the dream scenario. Two rival companies under one roof. The possibilities were endless. Goldberg versus Austin. Sting versus The Rock. Dream matches that could define an era. Now, let's not forget, ECW, it wasn't originally part of WWE. It was its own hardcore wrestling company under the ownership of Paul Heyman. Vince McMahon had been quietly helping ECW financially for years, and eventually he bought it outright. So when the invasion storyline kicked off, WWE wasn't just absorbing WCW, it was also folding ECW into the mix, creating what should have been the ultimate inter-promotional war. The invasion was supposed to be the ultimate payoff, a war between WWE and the alliance of WCW and ECW, but what we got, let's just say, didn't live up to the hype. On paper, the concept was pure gold. WCW and ECW unite to take down WWE. Fans imagined a true invasion, outsiders storming the gates, shocking betrayals, and dream matches that would define an era. The storyline had the potential to be the biggest wrestling angle of all time. But here's the reality. WWE did have the star power to make the vision happen. The biggest WCW names, Goldberg, Sting, Hogan, Nash, Flair, were still under lucrative Time Warner contracts. They were getting paid to sit at home. And WWE wasn't willing to buy out those deals. So instead of a roster stacked with legends, the WCW side was represented by mid-card talent like Lance Storm, Mike Awesome, Sean Stasiak, with Booker T and Diamond Dallas Page as the biggest names. ECW brought its own flavor of hardcore wrestling, but again, most of its top stars were either retired or unavailable. So the alliance lacked the credibility to feel like a real threat. And then came the creative decision that completely changed the tone. WWE stars leading the alliance. Stone Cold Steve Austin, a WWE icon, defected and became the face of WCW ECW. Kurt Angle joined the mix. Suddenly the storyline wasn't WWE versus WCW ECW. It was WWE versus WWE. The storyline, the invasion angle, lost its identity and became an internal power struggle. To make matters worse, WCW was portrayed as inferior from the start. Their first match on TV Booker T versus Buff Bagwell, a bout so poorly received that it killed any momentum. WCW had, instead of building WCW as a legitimate rival, WWE buried them under its own narrative right from the bat. So what started as a dream scenario quickly turned into a watered-down version of what fans wanted. The hype was there, but the execution? Not even close. Now let's dig into the real reasons why the Invasion storyline is considered one of WWE's biggest creative failures. These weren't just minor mistakes, they were decisions that completely derailed what could have been a historic angle. First off, the lack of star power. The first and most obvious problem, the absence of WWE's biggest names. Fans wanted Goldberg, Sting, Hogan, Nash, Flair. Icons who defined WCW. Instead, we got mid-carders and a handful of recognizable faces like Booker T and DDP. Without those marquee names, the Invasion never felt like a true threat. It felt like WWE was fighting its developmental territory, not its greatest rival. 2. The identity crisis of the alliance. The concept was WCW and ECW versus WWE. Simple, right? But WWE muddied the waters by putting its own stars, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Kurt Angle, at the forefront of the alliance. Suddenly the story wasn't about outsiders invading, it was about WWE talent turning on WWE. That shift killed the sense of danger and made the angle feel like just another internal feud. Point 3. Burying WCW from day one. From the very first WCW match on TV, on WWE TV, the writing was on the wall. Instead of building momentum, WWE doubled down on making WCW look weak. WCW titles were treated as second-rate, and their wrestlers were booked to lose repeatedly. How can fans buy into an invasion when the invaders look like jobbers? 4. Rushed storytelling. The invasion angle lasted only 5 months, ending abruptly at Survivor Series 2001. That's way too short for a storyline of this magnitude. WWE could have stretched this out for a year, slowly introducing big WCW names as their contracts expired, building tension and creating dream matches. Instead, they blew right through everything in record time, leaving fans unsatisfied. And my take on that, it's all because of Vince McMahon's ego. 5. Missed character arcs. Think about the potential. WCW loyalists fighting for survival. ECW extremists bringing chaos. WWE stars defending their turf. Instead, we got confusing heel face turns and alliances that made no sense. Austin's defection felt forced. DDP was buried in the stalker gimmick. Talents who could have been elevated, like Rob Van Dam, were overshadowed by WWE's obsession with its own main eventers. The fallout? WCW and ECW were absorbed without fanfare, and the invasion angle became a cautionary tale. WWE missed the chance to create new megastars and instead reinforced the idea that only WWE talent mattered. To this day, fans look back and wonder, what if they had done it right? This is where the heartbreak really sets in. The invasion angle had the potential to deliver some of the most iconic matches in wrestling history. Matches fans had been fantasizing about for years. But instead of giving us those dream encounters, WWE rushed a storyline and left us with a handful of forgettable bouts. Dream matches that never happened. Stone Cold versus Goldberg. Two of the most dominant forces of the Attitude Era and the Monday Night Wars. Fans wanted this clash of titans, but it never happened during the invasion. The Rock versus Sting. The People's Champion against WCW's franchise player. This could have been a WrestleMania main event, but Sting stayed home under his WCW contract. Undertaker versus DDP. Instead of a stalker gimmick that buried DDP, imagine a serious rivalry between the Dead Man and WCW's People's Champion. Triple H versus Booker T in a true WCW versus WWE showdown. Booker T was one of the WCW's biggest stars, but he never got the spotlight he deserved during the invasion. Rob Van Dam versus Chris Jericho in an ECW versus WWE technical masterpiece. RVD was red hot during the invasion, but he was never positioned as the face of ECW. A proper feud with Jericho could have elevated him further. So how could WWE have done it better? Here are some scenarios that could have saved the invasion storyline. Stretch the invasion over a year. Start small with mid-card WCW talent, then gradually introduce the big names as their contract expires. Build anticipation for Goldberg, Sting, Hogan entering the fray. Keep WWE stars out of the alliance. The alliance should have been WCW and ECW loyalists only. No Austin, no Angle. That would have kept the storyline pure and believable. Make WCW look strong. Book WCW to win early. Give them credibility. Let Booker T and DDP score big victories over WWE main eventers to establish the threat. They could have made a brand split sooner. Instead of killing WCW, make it a separate show with its own identity. A true interpromotional war could have lasted years, culminating in a massive WrestleMania showdown. Elevate new stars. Use the invasion to create new megastars. RVD, Booker T, and others could have been positioned as main event players instead of being overshadowed by WWE's existing roster. In short, WWE had the chessboard set up for greatness, but they played checkers instead. So what are the lessons from WWE's biggest miss? So was the WCW-ECW invasion doomed from the start? In some ways, yes. The contractual issues with WCW's biggest stars were a massive hurdle. Without Goldberg, Sting, Hogan, Flair, WWE couldn't deliver the fantasy booking fans dreamed of. But here's the truth. Even with those limitations, WWE still had enough talent and creative flexibility to make this storyline work. The real failure wasn't the roster. It was the execution. They had the perfect storm. The end of the Monday Night Wars, the acquisition of two rival companies, and a fan base hungry for something epic. Instead of capitalizing on that momentum, they rushed the angle, buried WCW and ECW from day one, and turned the invasion into an internal WWE feud. It became about Vince McMahon versus Shane and Stephanie, not WWE versus WCW, ECW. That shift killed the magic. The invasion should have been at least a year-long saga. It could have been a 2, 3, 4, 5-year thing. If they really put the effort on it, it could have been at least 1, 2, 3 years. Easily. A slow burn that built anticipation, introducing big names gradually, and give WCW and ECW credibility. It should have created new megastars, not reinforced the same old hierarchy. Instead of ending it in 5 months with Survivor Series 2001, leaving fans with one of the biggest what-ifs in wrestling history. So what can today's wrestling promotions learn from this? 3 big takeaways. Star power matters, but storytelling matters more. Even if you don't have every big name, you can still create compelling narratives by elevating the talent you do have. Don't rush the payoff. Epic storylines need time to breathe. A slow build creates anticipation and makes the payoff unforgettable. Protect the identity of your angle. If it's an invasion, make it feel like an invasion. Keep the lines clear. Don't dilute the concept with unnecessary swerves. The WCW ECW invasion remains a cautionary tale, a storyline that had everything going for it but collapsed under poor creative decisions. It's a reminder that in wrestling, hype is easy, execution is everything. What do you think? Was the invasions WWE's biggest missed opportunity, or was it doomed from the start? Analyst's booking room. Control versus belief. Drew McIntyre's road to SummerSlam. So Drew McIntyre's championship reign begins not with triumph, but with control. After escaping the cage against Cody Rhodes amid chaos involving Jacob Fatu, Drew doesn't pretend the victory was noble. He presents it as necessary. The message is simple. The world is unpredictable, and champions who hesitate don't last. That philosophy immediately reshapes the title picture. In Montreal, as we saw yesterday, Sami Zayn won the fatal 4-way match against Damian Priest, Randy Orton, and Trick Williams by pinning Priest to become the #1 contender. The victory feels earned, emotional, and organic. Montreal rallies behind Sami not because he's favored, but because he believes. For Sami, this isn't about shortcuts, it's about destiny. It's about persistence finally paying off. That belief carries him to the Royal Rumble, where he challenges Drew McIntyre for the championship in Saudi Arabia, a place where Sami is enormously popular and emotionally connected to the audience. The match is framed as the ultimate contrast. Sami's faith versus Drew's realism. Sami throws everything he has at a champion, and for moments, it feels like belief might finally break through, but history repeats itself. Trick Williams interferes, costing Sami the match. Drew retains the title, moving to 12-0 all-time against Sami Zayn. Crucially, Drew does not orchestrate the interference. He simply capitalizes on it. This matters. Drew doesn't celebrate. He doesn't gloat. He simply reinforces his worldview. Belief without awareness is vulnerability. Sami is devastated, but not broken. The same night, Cody Rhodes wins the Royal Rumble. With the no rematch clause still in place, Cody has done the only thing possible to earn another opportunity. He chooses Drew McIntyre for WrestleMania, not out of revenge, but out of unfinished business. As the road to WrestleMania unfolds, Jacob Fatu inserts himself into the championship picture. His involvement isn't random. Fatu nearly prevented Drew from winning the title in the cage, brawled with Cody, and represents a force that Drew cannot fully control. Tensions escalate between all three men, and as history is layered, motives are questioned, and chaos looms. Eventually, the match becomes unavoidable. Drew McIntyre versus Cody Rhodes versus Jacob Fatu for the championship at WrestleMania. Meanwhile, Sami Zayn redirects his pain. At WrestleMania, Sami faces Trick Williams in a personal grudge match. This isn't about titles, it's about closure. Sami defeats Williams cleanly, reclaiming his agency and proving that interference no longer defines him. That victory becomes the turning point of Sami's year. Drew retains the championship at Mania by pinning Jacob Fatu. The finish is decisive and symbolic. Cody hits a second and then goes for a third crossroads on Fatu. As Cody commits, Drew strikes him with a claymore, capitalizes on the opening and pins Fatu. Cody is protected, the chaos is neutralized, Drew leaves WrestleMania still champion, still in control. After WrestleMania, Drew McIntyre's leave with the championship, but not with peace. Pinning Jacob Fatu proves that Drew can survive chaos, but it doesn't erase it. Cody Rhodes never took the fall, and that matters. Drew doesn't brag about WrestleMania. Instead, he frames it as confirmation. Control works. He predicted the chaos, absorbed it, and walked out as champion. To Drew, WrestleMania isn't a triumph, it's validation. Sami Zayn's victory over Trick Williams is quieter, but just as important. This match isn't about revenge alone, it's about agency. For the first time since the Royal Rumble, Sami wins a high-stakes match where no one interferes. No one hijacks the moment, and no one takes it from him. Sami doesn't mention Drew afterwards. He talks about responsibility, about learning when to fight emotion and when to fight smart. From here, their paths diverge. Drew moves into the role of a governing champion. He isn't omnipresent, but when he speaks, it's deliberate. He defends the title selectively, choosing challengers who represent unpredictability, not belief. Drew's opponents in this stretch aren't dreamers, they're threats. Power wrestlers, wild cards, men who rely on momentum rather than patience. Drew beats them all, reinforcing the idea that chaos can be managed if you're willing to adapt early and strike decisively. Every win adds to Drew's confidence, but also subtly narrows his worldview. Each successful defense convinces him further that emotion is weakness and faith is naive. He doesn't mock Sami directly, but the subtext is clear. Drew believes he has already proven his philosophy correct. Meanwhile, Sami takes a different road. Sami doesn't immediately chase championships. Instead, he wrestles, often and against a variety of opponents, veterans, up-and-comers, styles that force him to adjust. Sami's promos during this period are introspective, not defiant. He talks about the royal loss openly, about being 0-12 against Drew, about how belief alone isn't enough if it blinds you. But here's the key difference. Sami doesn't abandon belief. He disciplines it. Instead of charging headlong, Sami begins picking his moments. He studies opponents. He survives matches he doesn't dominate. He wins some bouts ugly but clean. The crowd sees something new. A Sami Zayn who still fights with heart, but no longer with recklessness. Crucially, Sami and Drew do not interact during this stretch. That absence matters. Drew assumes Sami is done. Another good wrestler who couldn't evolve fast enough. Sami assumes Drew is unbeatable for now. Neither man needs to say it out loud. The audience feels it in the negative space. As weeks pass, subtle visual storytelling does the work. Drew is shown watching matches from backstage monitors, arms crossed, detached, confident. Sami is shown exhausted after wins, sitting on the apron, breathing hard, but nodding to himself. Control versus endurance. Then, the King of the Ring is announced. And that's when the air changes. For Drew, King of the Ring initially feels irrelevant. He's the champion. He doesn't need a crown. But his stipulation is unavoidable. The winner earns a world title match at SummerSlam. No cash-ins, no shortcuts, no ambiguity. For Sami, King of the Ring feels different from everything else. It's structured, it's earned, it's fair. This isn't destiny calling, it's opportunity presenting itself honestly. When Sami is inserted in the tournament, it isn't dramatic. He doesn't mention Drew. He doesn't talk about SummerSlam. He says one thing that reframes the entire arc. If belief is going to mean anything, it has to survive structure. That line is the thesis of the rest of the story. Drew hears it and just dismisses it. After all, he's beaten Sami 12 times. Why would the 13th be any different? And that quiet dismissal, not anger, not hatred, is what ultimately costs Drew everything. So here are the ideal opponents for Sami, for the King of the Ring. Round of 16. Sami Zayn versus Shinsuke Nakamura. Theme of the match: respect versus emotion. This is the right opener. Nakamura is dangerous, unpredictable, and veteran savvy. He forces Sami to wrestle measured, not frantic. Sami nearly loses, but by trying to rally the crowd too early. Sami wins only after slowing the pace and countering, not chasing momentum. So the finish, a luva kick after blocking the Kinshasa. So the lesson learned in this match: belief must be controlled, not emotional. Then we get to the quarterfinal. Sami Zayn versus Damian Priest. Overcoming the ghost of opportunism. This is essential. Priest represents everything that hurts Sami and Drew alike: timing, shortcuts, power. Priest mocks Sami for never taking the easy way. Sami survived. So during the match, Sami survives power spots and refuses to rush the finish. So the finish: roll up reversal into a decisive Eluva kick. Patience beats power when power expects panic. That's the lesson for this match. Semi-final, and this is a big one. Sami Zayn versus Randy Orton. Intelligence versus experience. This is the mental test. Orton dissects Sami's patterns. He tries to bait Sami into mistakes. Crowd is tense. This isn't explosive, it's surgical. Sami anticipates the RKO, but instead of reacting to it. Finish: RKO counter, Blue Thunder Bomb, Helluva Kick. So the lesson Sami learns in this one is study and awareness neutralizes control. And here's the biggest match of all. Sami Zayn versus Gunther in the final. The theme is endurance versus absolutism. Now, we all know Sami is one of the few that defeated Gunther in a match at WrestleMania. So this is the coronation match. Gunther is the embodiment of inevitability. No chaos, no shortcuts, just punishment. Drew watches this match closely. So the key story beat: Sami refuses to stay down, not recklessly, but deliberately. So the finish: Sami survives a powerbomb, rolls through, traps Gunther in a modified crucifix pin. So the lesson he learns: belief doesn't break power, it outlasts it. So why does all these matches and this bracket work? Each opponent strips away one flaw Sami had earlier in the year. So in the round of 16, Nakamura removed the emotional overreach. In the quarterfinal, Priest removed the panic under power. Orton removed predictability. And the final, Gunther, he removed doubt under inevitability. By the end of the King of the Ring, Sami hasn't become sneaky. He hasn't become ruthless. He's become complete. Drew's silent thought line. Drew doesn't interfere. He doesn't comment publicly. But each round chips away at his certainty. Because Sami isn't surviving chaos, he's mastering structure. And Drew knows structure is one thing chaos can't save you from. So from the crown to the collision, Sami Zayn versus Drew McIntyre. When Sami is crowned King of the Ring, the moment isn't loud. It's grounding. There's no grand speech about destiny, no promises about changing the world. Sami simply stands in the ring, crown on his head, breathing in the moment like someone who knows exactly what it cost to get there. Drew McIntyre watches from a distance. He doesn't interrupt the celebration. He doesn't storm the ring. Drew waits until the following week when Sami is standing alone. No crown, no confetti, just a man again. That's when Drew finally speaks. Drew doesn't yell. He doesn't insult. He states a fact. He reminds Sami that belief has failed 12 times. 12 matches, 12 losses. Drew tells Sami King of the Ring doesn't change math. Structure doesn't rewrite history. And at SummerSlam, Sami will lose for the 13th time. Not because Drew hates him, but because reality doesn't bend. Sami listens. He doesn't interrupt. And that's what unsettles Drew. Sami responds calmly. He acknowledges the record. He doesn't argue it. He doesn't try to explain it away. Instead, he tells Drew that those 12 losses were necessary because every one of them taught him something Drew never noticed. He tells Drew that this time he isn't chasing belief. He's chasing it with discipline. For the first time in years, Sami says he isn't asking Drew to believe him. He says he's ready to outlast him. Over the next few weeks, Drew escalates the pressure without touching Sami. He sits at commentary during Sami's matches. He times Sami's victory. He points out mistakes afterwards. Drew keeps insisting that Sami's confidence is just denial wearing her crown. But Sami never snaps. When Drew says 13, Sami says 1. One night, one match, one outcome that rewrites everything. Their promos never turn violent. No pull-apart brawl. No cheap attacks. That absence of chaos becomes the story. Drew is used to opponents trying to provoke him. Sami refuses to play that game. Instead, Sami leans into preparations. He studies Drew. He talks openly about the Claymore, not with fear, but with familiarity. He mentions Hell in a Cell, Clash at the Castle, WrestleMania, The Cage, not to mock Drew, but to show that he understands the journey. Sami frames SummerSlam not as a moment, but as the final exam of everything Drew has taught him by beating him 12 times. That's when Drew's confidence begins to show crack. Because Drew's control has always depending on opponents panicking first, Sami doesn't. Sami respects Drew. and that respect denies Drew the emotional leverage he's always relied on. In the final face-to-face before SummerSlam, Drew repeats the line one last time. 13. Sami finally smiles. He tells Drew that 13 isn't a curse, it's a conclusion. He says that Drew taught him the world isn't fair, but he also taught him that chaos eventually exhausts itself. And when it does, the man who can still stand, still think, still believe, wins. They shake hands, not in sportsmanship, but in acknowledgement. At SummerSlam, there will be no interference, no chaos, no excuses. Just a champion who mastered control and a challenger who learned how to survive it. And when the bell rings, both men know one of them is about to be proven wrong. So SummerSlam, the end comes when control finally meets his limit. Drew McIntyre connects with a Claymore, clean, center of the ring, the kind that has ended countless matches before Sami Zayn doesn't roll out. He doesn't crumble, he kicks out. Drew doesn't argue with the referee, he doesn't look shocked, he adjusts. Sami fires with a blue thunder bomb, he holds a cover, Drew kicks out, and now it's Sami who has to recalibrate. Drew strikes again, a second Claymore, harder, sharper. This time it feels inevitable. Sami kicks out at the last possible split second. The crowd erupts, not in disbelief, but in realization. Something is changing. Drew goes for the kill. Another Claymore. Sami ducks. Drew stumbles, rises, and instinctively retreats to the corner. The place he's ended careers. Sami doesn't hesitate. Haluva kick. Drew collapses but doesn't fall away. Sami pulls him back, places him back in the corner just like he did to Jey Uso at WrestleMania a couple of years ago. Second Haluva kick. Sami lifts him. Blue Thunder Bomb. 1, 2, 3. There's no chaos, no interference, no injustice. Sami doesn't celebrate immediately. He sits in the ring exhausted, overwhelmed, not because he can't believe it, because he understands it. 12 losses led here. Belief didn't collapse, it endured. Drew McIntyre sits in the corner, staring forward, no anger, no protest, just the weight of the realization. For the first time since 2020, Drew McIntyre was not robbed. He was beaten. Sami offers a hand. Drew looks at it for a long moment, then accepts it, not in defeat, but in acknowledgement. Belief didn't cheat control. It outlasted it. Drew, on the other hand, is left with one question. What happens when the world doesn't betray you and you still lose? So what do you think? I know it was quite a long booking room. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments section. Okay, so in my preview and interaction, well, today in WWE history, since it's Royal Rumble week, here are some past winners. 1988, first ever Royal Rumble won by Hacksaw Jim Duggan on this day in 1988. 1999, Vince McMahon eliminated Stone Cold Steve Austin with the help of The Rock to win the Rumble. 2004, Chris Benoit entered at number 1 and won the Rumble. He would later go on to WrestleMania to win the World Heavyweight Championship. 2009, Randy Orton eliminated Triple H to win. 2015, Roman Reigns won and was so loudly booed despite The Rock's appearance to support him. Let's just say that the WWE Universe didn't want Roman jammed down their throat. 11 years later, the same universe can't get enough of Roman Reigns. And 1 year later, Triple H won the Rumble and the title by eliminating Dean Ambrose. Roman was forced to defend the title and enter number 1 to try to retain his championship. Title changes on this day in the past, in history. 1999, Owen Hart, God rest his soul, and Jeff Jarrett won the Tag Team Championship when they defeated Ken Shamrock and Big Boss Man. And in 2009, 2 title changes for the same couple. One happy and one not. Edge defeated Jeff Hardy to become WWE Champion, but Melina defeated Beth Phoenix to win the women's title. So some birthdays to celebrate as well. Michelle McCool turns 46 today, and the Honky Tonk Man, the guy who had the longest reigning Intercontinental Championship reign before Gunther broke it, he turns 73 years old today. Normally I would talk about next week's subjects. Right now, I didn't have time to reflect on that. So probably when I do my Royal Rumble predictions later this week, I'm going to tell you all about next week's episode. So that's a wrap for this week's episode of the Wrestling Analyst Podcast Beyond the Bell. Thanks for joining me as we break down the stories, the drama, and the action that keeps the wrestling world turning. If you enjoyed today's deep dive, make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this podcast with your fellow wrestling fans. So got a storyline you'd like me to break down? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, keep your eyes in the ring, your ears on the story, and remember, when the bell rings, the analysis begins. See you next week on Beyond the Bell. That's it for this week, and thank you for listening to the Wrestling Analyst Podcast Beyond the Bell. If you loved what you heard, smash that subscribe button, drop a like, and hit that notification bell so you never miss the action. Got opinions? Share them in the comments. I want to hear your take. So until next time, stay loud, stay proud, and keep going beyond the bell.